issue that we might run into, where Donald Trump's dishonesty and weakness in terms of negotiating and tactics. I mean, he's just really, his biggest skill is hyping things up. He's like a hype guy. But in terms of actual negotiating with world leaders, I mean, so far we've seen it's been a disaster. Of course, if you're a right winger, you think the opposite, because everything you see is telling you that he's doing a great job when the liberals are crying and blah blah. But here's the reality, and I'm going to talk about a problem that this introduces. The reality is, you had both Mexico and Canada, and it's so tough, man. When you're dealing with so much dishonesty and incompetence, it's so tough to attribute what you're seeing to what, right? Because it could be coming from both or either, right? So, was Mexico and Canada actually able to outsmart Donald Trump? Or does Donald Trump realize what they did, but he doesn't really care? Because ultimately, all he cares about is getting what he wants for himself, and he cares about what the base thinks. So the base thinks he did a great job with Canada and Mexico, because right-wing propaganda, that's what, like, everything he does, any mistakes, just whatever it is, it's all in right-wing media. It's great, he's, golden era or whatever, right? So that's what they're hearing. So they think that he did a great negotiating deal, part of the deal, blah, blah, blah. So would he really care that Canada and Mexico didn't really, like, he didn't really get anything from them? The stuff that they said that they were doing, they're already gonna do. Joe Biden was able to get the same thing or similar without all the threat of tariffs and messing with the economy and the stock market and having our allies, not really trust us. Joe Biden got the same or similar or more without all the chaos, without all the damage. But again, if the base feels like he's doing a great job, does Trump really care, right? So what's the big problem that this introduces that I just figured out? Other world leaders and also corporations, these guys are far more clever and strategic than Donald Trump ever will be. And if not, they have people that are far more clever and strategic than Donald Trump will ever be at their disposal. So what that means is that they probably are well aware of what I'm aware of, what I just stated to you. And if they're smart, potentially, they would want to utilize the same tactic as well. So what does this mean? This means that Donald Trump can really paint an effective message that he did a great job and he brought a bunch of jobs back and the economy is booming and whatever. He can get some really solid looking wins. And this can go beyond just the right-wing ecosystem. This can be powerful enough to penetrate into liberals. Some liberals actually being like, listen, man, some people that aren't that political, they hear a lot of negative stuff on CNN or whatever, but CNN's, they're partisan and they're biased or whatever. So they're open to being challenged in terms of being told that, hey, the liberal media wasn't really honest, and actually Trump did some really good things. They're open to that kind of a messaging. And what I'm about to describe can produce material that will be quite effective at getting some of those liberals to be like, oh wow, okay, CNN is lying to us. Trump actually did some pretty good things. So what I'm talking about is what the world leaders and CEOs would have learned by now is that you can pretend to give in to Trump and what he says, and that's all it takes, right? So everyone is concerned about their own interests, right? So A foreign leader is concerned with their country. A CEO is concerned with their company, right? That's all they really care about. So as long as the company is good, the country's good, they're good. That's all they really care about. So CEOs who might be afraid of Trump targeting them or whatever, and also they want to take advantage of like Trump is kind of trying to seduce them or whatever with, you know, hey, I'm gonna deregulate you. All you gotta do is bring money back to the country, blah blah blah. I mean, they certainly want to take advantage of that. They want to lower the corporate tax rate, and they want to benefit from deregulation. And here's the thing, based on what they're seeing, it looks like they can get these things without actually doing anything for it. So they can get free goodies from Donald Trump without actually doing anything. And the way that they do it, Donald Trump, it'll be mutually beneficial. Donald Trump will look like a hero, look like he did a really good job, and they'll get the benefits of whatever he hands them. The only thing is that we, the American people, we're the only one that, once again, we're the ones that lose, because what I'm talking about doing is just like with Canada and Mexico. So a CEO, I'll give you a case in point. This is what inspired this. So Apple just announced that they're going to be doing 20,000, opening up 20,000 jobs in the next 4 years in this country. And as usual, just like with the Mexico and Canada thing, you know, the company says one thing and the news reports it, and they kind of introduce other things or other ideas, and you're kind of like, they didn't exactly say that. Where are you getting that from? So you see some of the articles, they're mentioning Trump. They're saying things like, you know, basically giving the impression that the company, that Apple's going to hire all these people in the country because of the tariffs or something. So essentially suggesting that this is a win for Donald Trump, his tariff strategy. Everyone's talking about it's gonna raise prices for us and blah 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 blah. He doesn't know what he's doing, but in reality, look, 20,000 jobs, Apple, and it's all because of Trump. If Kamala had won, you know, we wouldn't have had those jobs, right? So that will be the first step. So they make that announcement, right? And then Donald Trump responds in kind and says, yeah, we're going to deregulate. We're going to give you these corporate tax breaks or whatever, right? So the company makes the announcement. Donald Trump looks really good. His base is like, yeah, we're winning. And some liberals will get some of that feedback and be like, I wonder if Donald Trump is actually not what I've been told. It actually seems like he's doing some great stuff. I mean, 20,000 jobs, Apple, it's real, right? Then after Trump gets the credit, so they make the announcement, Trump gets the credit, right? Then somewhere, they said in 4 years, right? Somewhere along the lines, plans change, you know, the economy, you know, go into a recession or whatever, and then Apple, however they do it, basically the 20,000 jobs never manifest, right? And this is not some like novel idea. We've seen this before, where these companies will make these big announcements like, we're gonna do this big thing and all this money and investment and whatever, and then nothing really comes of it. But here's the trick, right? Donald Trump already got the credit for it, and it's gonna become a talking point that we're gonna hear for years about how many jobs he brought back, and he brought back Apple jobs, and he brought back this and whatever. So the fact that it doesn't manifest, if it in a scenario, if it doesn't actually manifest, the jobs don't actually appear, doesn't matter, right? Because this will be solid rhetoric that'll have a tangible source, because Apple actually said this, right? Apple actually said this. So it's not just some right-wing thing. The company said it, right? And hey, if they bring those jobs, that'll be great, right? But who's going to keep track of whether they actually do it or not, right? There comes the magic. So Trump gets the credit, right? The corporations get their tax breaks, and they get their deregulation, whatever. So Apple makes a killing, right? This is a boost in their profits, right? Because deregulations, cutting costs. So they're going to have a great year. The CEO is going to, his bonus, millions and millions of dollars he's going to get from his executive package or whatever for his compensation. Tons of money. Trump is going to, again, get the reward of like, oh, he brought these jobs back. But then it never happens, and the base is not going to know. And a lot of the liberals won't know either, right? Because if you're not keeping track of this, right? How do you know? You just hear the big announcement, and then you hear for months and months, yeah, and Trump this because of the tariffs, he brought back these jobs and that jobs, and he was able to negotiate with Canada and Mexico. You have all this noise, which gives the impression that Donald Trump is the boss and he's winning, right? So what is the problem with that, right? Other than obviously people getting fooled, thinking they're getting something and they're not getting anything. Well, anything that helps them to sell the idea that Trump is actually doing a great job is obviously bad news, because obviously, well, not obviously, but for anyone other than the right wing, of course, we know that Trump is a danger to the country. He's bad for the economy. I mean, he's just bad all around. So obviously, with that being the case, any possibility of Donald Trump being able to sell himself, I mean, he's already sold himself obviously to the base, right? The danger comes from when it's outside of the base. So you got the hardcore like MAGA people, they're not going to leave him at all. But if the support sticks within his hardcore like cult following, it's not enough, right? It's not enough. And that is where the Republican Party becomes weak and they can be defeated. However, if he's able to maintain a decent support beyond MAGA based on stuff like this, where you have people that are not MAGA who are Trump voters who are seeing like, oh, look, his tariffs are working and the negotiations are working. We were fair. That's why I warned you. Remember, I made this video months ago. I warned these left-wing channels to not get ahead of themselves and being too aggressive, talking about how what was the talking point? Talking about how oh, the tariffs and how it's gonna be taxes on us, blah blah. Not that that was not true, but like I pointed out, there's a lot of ways this could play out. It's not necessarily a black and white thing. I mentioned things like the companies can not change their prices because so the tariff is paid by the importer. So the importer, if they have enough margin, they can adjust. So basically, the tariff can cut into their profits, but if there's still some profit available to them, they can just accept a reduced profit. So rather than increasing their price to the consumer so they can maintain the same profit level, if there's still profit available based on what the tariff level is at, if it's low enough that it's still a profit, they could just be like, okay, we're just gonna, for this particular product that we import, we're just going to continue selling at the same price even though it's costing us more, which means we'll make less money. We might even lose money slightly, but if overall, like I have all these products that I'm selling, right? And there's one particular product that's coming from a country that has a tariff on it, right? So I might choose to take a loss on that particular product by not adjusting the price and just take the hit of whatever, because I don't want to increase my prices and then reduce my sales, and I don't want to introduce competition to where, if there's someone else who can sell at a cheaper price, blah blah blah, whatever. So it's a lot more complicated than that. So I just warned that it's good to let people know about the threats of these tariffs, but just don't get over your skis and be too like it's black and white, like he's doing the tariffs and then definitely da da da. Because again, the narrative can easily be, you hear all this talk, liberal media talking about tariffs, whatever, and ultimately we didn't see a major increase in prices because he was able to negotiate a deal successfully with Mexico, which made he didn't have to do the tariff, and then he negotiated with Canada. So that's not actually what happened, but it looks that way. Not only to, obviously the MAGA believes that, MAGA believes anything, right? But it also is gonna look that way to just Trump voters who are not MAGA, right? Just casually observing, because they'll be like, we were told big, inflation, whatever, and prices, and then you find out that, hey, Trump didn't even have to do tariffs because he figured out these deals. So you're like, liberal media, right? Then you have some liberals who are, so liberals, right, listening to liberal media, who heard this stuff and they were like, oh my goodness. And then they see, wait a minute, so the tariffs didn't work out because it looks like Trump's negotiating actually worked. So now you have multiple groups outside of MAGA that have a feeling of like, maybe Trump's actually doing a good job, right? So if more and more people start exploiting this sort of loophole, where you can make Trump look like he got a win to his base without actually giving him anything, or maybe you just give him very, very minimal stuff that you would have given anyway without the tariffs or whatever. But you can either not give him anything or just give him a little trinket, and then all you need to do is help him to sell the lie, right? So as a corporation like Apple, right, you put some big announcement and like, oh, due to the tariffs of Donald Trump, we're looking to do, like, maybe that was your plan all along. That's, for example, that's what potentially I would do as a corporation to outsmart Donald Trump. If I had a plan of, because of AI, we already had a plan to hire like 2,000 people or whatever it is. If I'm a CEO, my focus is on my company, right? I want to maximize profits. I want to do the best for my investors. So to do that would mean I want to extract as much as I can get from the government, and Trump is the government now. So, if he wants to play games about tariffs and whatever, and he's looking for whatever, now that gets a little complicated because, from a ethical standpoint, I would not want to be helping him to deceive the American people. But if you put ethics aside, which I'm sure a lot of the CEOs wouldn't have a problem with doing, then I would absolutely be playing Trump. Anything that I was going to do, I pretend like I'm doing it because what I'll do is any positive announcements in terms of spending in the country, I will just attach Trump's name to it and say, in the spirit of America first, or whatever it is, right? Because I know right-wing media is going to jump on top of it. All these like independent media will go on top of it. And then a lot of people not thinking critically will just be like, oh, looks like Trump is winning. So that's something that can be very dangerous, right, over time. Because again, if Apple does it, another company does it, another company does it, you're gonna have all these wins that have a tangible source, right? A company, this is not Trump saying it, this is not Fox saying it, a company CEO said, because of Trump tariff, we did X, Y, and Z. And if X, Y, and Z is something that looks like more jobs in America, then it's kind of like, oh, I guess Trump is, you know what I mean? So it's gonna be scary. Just like Wisconsin, the jobs never appeared. It was all of us, right. And we've seen this playbook before. So the fact that Mexico and Canada did it, I'm sure, because Trump is the doofus, right? A lot of these world leaders and CEOs, they're not doofus like him. A lot of these people are very smart. They went to Ivy League schools. They're very strategic thinkers. Unlike Trump, they were able to build really successful businesses. Trump, a lot of his success came from inheritance and then the branding. That's the biggest thing he's able to do is branding. So he's able to, that's why a big part of his money was his name. It's branding, right? The Trump name. He wouldn't build a building. He wouldn't do an actual real estate deal. He would sell his name. So somebody else does a real estate deal. Somebody else builds a building. Somebody else has a business, but they pay Trump to put Trump's name on the building, right? That was his thing. He does a show, reality show, one of the biggest things that he was a part of. And I don't think that was his show. I think somebody else came up with it and they partnered with him or whatever. But bottom line is he was able to do the hype and setting up the boardroom stuff and present himself as a successful guy. That's his thing. But these CEOs, a lot of these CEOs, they actually have built things. They have actually come up with ideas, and like these are the actual successful businessmen, right? They're not all over social media doing reality shows. They have been busy, building businesses and doing business endeavors as opposed to a lot of just marketing and hype stuff. So they have the capability to outsmart Donald Trump pretty easily, and the door is open. We've seen how it works. Two countries did it. Apple might be doing it, and like you mentioned, Environmental Coffee House. companies have done this kind of thing before. I think Donald Trump himself did it, where he talked about bringing jobs to some country. Where was that place? They were going to bring jobs to some place, not country, some area in the country, some kind of manufacturing jobs, and he had a golden shovel and like, oh, we're gonna bring jobs, and then of course right wing media, yeah, Trump is winning, and then nothing ever came of it. And it's not like right wing media was like, Trump failed us or whatever. Obviously, liberal media talked about it, but right wing media didn't talk about it. So if you're a conservative, you heard about Trump is bringing back manufacturing and this and that, and it's a golden era first term, right? And then that's all you heard of it. So in your mind somewhere, that was another piece of information. I was like, Trump is good. Trump does great things for the country, right? So then years later, even though it never happened, you're not aware of it, right? But you have all these feelings of how great Trump is. And one piece of that feeling is that story from years ago. You don't know this specifically because that's not, we're human beings. We're a little bit complex. We're organic. Sometimes there's a vibe thing to us. We have gut feelings and whatever. So you keep getting bombarded with like, Trump did this great thing and Trump did that great thing and Trump did this great thing. And you get a generic feeling of like, Trump is great and he does great things. Now, somebody asks you, why do you think he's great? A lot of people will struggle. They'll struggle to articulate because that's how it works. You keep feeding this stuff. It's like brainwashing. Trump did this thing, and that creates this generic feeling of like, Trump is a great guy and he's successful and whatever, right? No specific details associated with it because it's just you hear one positive thing, and unless you have photographic memory, you're not gonna remember all those different things. You just generate this sensation over time. So when somebody says Trump is a loser, you're like, they're nuts. What are you talking about? Trump is great. And you might remember some of these things. You might say like, what about the manufacturing jobs? And if the person's informed, they'd be like, actually, those never came to be. And then you'll be like, well, that's not true. Who told you that? What's the source? What's your source, right? And then if they show it, then you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Then you move on to some other thing that you might remember, like, oh, what about how such and such black employment was whatever. But, a lot of it's going to be vibes. And I'm not saying that's a right-wing thing. A lot of people who like Kamala, it was vibes. Biden, it was vibes. Obama, hope and change, it's vibes, right? So it's not unique to the right wing. However, what we're talking about right now, that is a very, very, very important factor to consider in terms of, again, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a new potential strategy that can lead to a bunch of new, positive sensations of like, Trump did this thing and Trump did that thing and Trump did this thing. So 4 years from now, it's kind of like, I don't know what these liberals are talking about, but the last 4 years have been golden. You know what I mean? Like, you feel like it's been great. And then somebody really pushes you hard, and then you try to remember a specific thing one by one, they're probably going to get shut down. You're going to say like, what about this thing? And then they'll be like, well, actually that didn't happen. Okay, well, what about this other thing? Well, actually that didn't happen. Then it's kind of like, okay, I don't know, man. Where are you getting this information from? That's not, you're probably watching CNN. That's how it works. Anyway, this is the Debate Me channel. Debate Me comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Pay attention to potential, because we've seen the pattern already with the $500 billion AI investment, which I picked up on right away. That was super suspicious. They did some digging, and I found out, yeah, this don't sound right. That was a thing from like, I think 2 years ago. It was already in process, and then the announcement was vague. They didn't actually say anything. They didn't say that Trump is investing or the government's investing, but they made it seem that way, and some media ran with that idea. They started saying things that weren't actually said, right? They just made, like, just making an announcement. Oh, these companies are making a $500 billion investment in AI in the next 4 years, and it's kind of like, but what does that mean? Like, what does that have to do with Trump? What does that have to do with the government? Is the government involved? And what's that number? Is that a number that's official? Is that like a goal? Like, what are we really talking about? But this country, people don't think deeply. They just hear that and they're like, oh, okay, Trump do the AI thing. So we had that. We had the Canada thing, Mexico thing. I know Apple's making an announcement. I don't know if that's what Apple's doing, but I've seen enough people play this trick that we can anticipate that more CEOs are gonna manipulate Trump, or not necessarily because he may know what they're doing, but why would he care? The main thing is if the base believes it's a win, then who the hell cares, right? Trump doesn't care about, making a deal where, the company does something and then he gives them something back. It's all marketing, right? This is all marketing exercise. The real focus is on himself, and his wealth and his power. So who the hell cares if a company, pretends to give him a win, but they're not actually giving him a win? As long as the base gets the perception that it's a win, then who the hell cares? So Trump might know, or he might be clueless and not realize he's being played, but the details don't matter. It doesn't matter whether he's aware or he's not. What matters is that companies can say things and give the impression they're going to do something because of Trump, not actually do it, but the base thinks so. Some liberals think so as well. So Trump gets the win. Meanwhile, we don't get anything. And also that emboldens the Republican Party, because if they have a good 4 years, then it's like, they'll have a good potential of like, hey, let's put another Republican in, because under Trump, 20,000 Apple jobs, 500 billion AI thing, he got Canada to lock down the border, and he got Mexico to bring the troops. Like, if you keep adding these things up, what's that gonna look like? You're gonna talk about 4 years from now, there's like 30 to 40 major supposed accomplishments that Trump did. Maybe they happened, maybe they didn't, right? The problem is they might not have happened, but he'll get full credit for it. And that's dangerous. All right, guys, I'm out.